The disciples in the boat they said, "Who is this person who even commands the wind and the waves, and they obey him?" Well, the demons know. He's the Son of the Most High God. Speaks a lot for us to be able to say it's not enough to say, I know who Jesus is. They knew who he was. It even puts into question, as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, it even puts into question the storm that happened. You know, if you look into this story, you realize Jesus got on his boat and went across, and he did one thing from all that we know recorded. He got out of the boat, he healed the demon-possessed man, and then he got back on the boat and went back. Some would say they wonder whether or not the storm was something that Satan was doing to keep Jesus away. He knew what was going to happen. He had a lot invested in this man. We see, though, in this story, too, that the authority of Jesus is exposed in this. These demons weren't in any battle with Jesus. They weren't saying, I don't care who you are, we're going to do what we're going to do. Immediately, in their acknowledgement of who Jesus is, they fall to the ground and beg for themselves not to be sent into the abyss. Now, the abyss, it can mean a number of things. Actually, a deep lake would be an abyss, but most scholars suggest that it's probably referring to what in Revelation 9, Revelation 20 talks about where all evil is going to go, that they'll be thrown into this abyss where there's gnashing of teeth and there's torture and all this goes on. And these demons are saying, look, we like it here on earth. Don't send us into this abyss where we'll be tortured for all eternity. They're begging. They know that where we go next is not up to us. Where we go next, only Jesus controls. They acknowledge the authority of Jesus that takes place in this story. And so Jesus gives them permission to go when they ask that they could go into the pigs instead. Understanding the truth of our situation, it's important for us to never estimate the schemes of the enemy, of Satan. Let's call him Satan. That's who he is. We live in a Western culture that it seems from outward appearance that demonic activity is not very prevalent. You go into a third world country, the countries that Scott referred to that are in poverty and all of that, it's everywhere. They see demon-possessed people and all that. We kind of just shine it off as someone who's just got, a drug imbalance or something like that. And you wonder why. Is it maybe because we underestimate Satan's presence? Certainly, there's some legitimacy to that when you realize that one of the biggest selling TV or movies out there right now has to do with vampires and werewolves and this whole spiritual world that takes place that we think, wow, that's cool. Who would not want to be in love with a vampire? I remember when I grew up, my friends or my family would have a couple over, and their kids got a new game for Christmas. It was an Ouija board. So they got it out. We wanted to play it. My parents says, there is no way you're going to play this game. It's just a game, Mom. They understood that it's much more serious than that you can never, Ephesians 4:27 says it, don't give the devil a foothold. And when we make light of these things, and when we think of, Alyssa likes to see the Wizards of Waverly Place, or whatever they are, I don't know where they're somewhere. And I watch the show, and it's kind of cute. They do little tricks with their wizardy, whatever they do. And I'm not here to criticize every show or everything that talks about spiritual world and talks about wizards and witches and all this kind of stuff. But the reality is, it dumbs us down to the reality of what Satan is doing and the scheming that takes place in our life. And we have to be attentive to that. We have to understand the reality of what happens. Jesus in our life exposes us to the truth of what is going on around us. The other reason in the Western world, though, is maybe the manifestation of Satan realizes I have no reason to manifest myself in that culture because they deny my existence. And I'm okay with that. Satan is perfectly okay if you don't believe in him, because he doesn't really care. He knows one day you'll realize it's true. All he cares about is you don't believe in Jesus. And if it means not believing in me also means you don't believe in Jesus, then I'm perfectly fine with that. And so I can totally understand where he would work in a culture where he says, hey, yeah, you guys, I mean, it's crazy to think that there's an evil world out there. It's crazy to think that there's demons that are working amongst us to try to trip us and deceive us and doing all that. You know, don't go there. Don't think about that stuff. And so he keeps us from realizing really what Satan is up to. We can easily we look at, the thoughts that go through our head of the temptations that we have and think, that's just life. We either say, I can watch a show that has language or nudity and stuff, and it won't affect me, and Satan's like, yeah, you keep believing that. And so he continues to deceive us and work in us, and there's an agenda that goes on in Satan to try to be able to convince us that none of that is important. Pursuing success, all that stuff, that's good. But the path to peace, when we're talking about peace in here, starts with exposing the truth. To understand that there is a battle that rages on within us, not with God, but within us. Paul talks about it, between our spiritual life and our relationship with Christ and the physical things in us that continue to draw us and pull us away, that kind of pull us into bondage, that possess us, if you will, much like the crazy man. Could be pornography, could be alcohol or drugs, could be anger, gossiping, could be insecurities and fears. There's many things that can take place in our life that can kind of hold us in and keep us from being able to really go forward and growing. And so part of the presence of Jesus as we bring him in through reading and together is that we become exposed to the truth of what's taking place. Not to deny that we have a responsibility, but to just call it the way it is and to see what's happening. And so Jesus does that. As his presence comes in there, clearly it's evident what's going on and everybody sees it. But also the presence of Jesus exposes the condition of our heart. In this particular story, we see that as just Jesus being there and what he's about does it. It impacts not only the person who is the demon-possessed man, but also the people around him. I mean, Jesus could have came up to this guy and pulled him aside and said, hey, look. I mean, there is a story in there where Jesus quiets the demons right away. He says, hey, be quiet. Could have done that. But he let him go. Jesus could have said, when they said, hey, don't send us to the abyss, he says, you know what? You're going to the abyss. Or he could have said, you're going to those rocks over there. They're not going anywhere. You could go sit in those things or something like that. He could have done a number of things. But he gave him permission. Why? Why didn't he stop evil at that moment and not allow it to continue on? Because as a result of what Jesus allowed to happen, it affected the economy of certainly the farmer and maybe even the townspeople who maybe were dependent on those the pigs and as food. It's the same question that we really ask today, is it not? When we always go, God, why do you allow evil to happen? Another story comes in the news, and even myself, I find, God, how could that happen? How could you not stop that? Well, Jesus, who has answered it before, but certainly in this case, if he was answered, maybe would have said the same thing, would have been something to the effect that the time has not yet come for him to send them into the abyss. The time of judgment that the Bible talks about of God coming and has not yet happened, and so the Bible talks about how God holding back in mercy his judgment as evil continues to spread and things continue to happen. He waits. He allows those things to happen. Why does he allow those things to happen? Well, certainly from this story, we see that the fact that allowing them go on those pigs exposes the real destructive nature of evil. Because, demons can't be seen, but the effect of them certainly can. And so in this story, not only in the demon-possessed person, but even seeing them going to the pigs, they're thinking, we'll go into these bunch of pigs, hang out for a while. And even in the evil in that, sends these pigs into the abyss. Into the water to drown.